Let me ask you something. Think about the last time you checked your bank account and felt fine. Not great. Not worried. Just fine. Like the number made sense, but somehow didn't feel like enough. Like you've been working for decades, doing the right things, paying the bills, saving a little, avoiding the obvious mistakes, and still, something doesn't add up. You're not broke, but you're not free either. And here's the thing nobody talks about. That gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now. It's rarely about income. It's rarely about how hard you work. Most of the time, it's about a handful of small habits that either build wealth quietly or quietly drain it, every single day. The habits I'm going to walk you through today aren't flashy. They don't require an app, a financial advisor, or a radical life change. They're the kind of things that silent millionaires do. Not the ones on TV, not the ones posting their lifestyle online. The ones you'd never guess were wealthy if you passed them on the street. This video is for anyone over 40 who's done waiting for a windfall and ready to understand what's actually working. Stay with me. There's a moment that happens in every store, every website, every time your phone buzzes with a sale notification. It's fast, almost invisible. A thought that feels less like a thought and more like a reflex. I want that. And then, almost immediately, your brain starts doing something remarkable. It starts building a case. It starts justifying. It tells you that you deserve it, that it's on sale, that you've been working hard, that it's not that expensive, that you'll use it all the time. Your brain becomes a lawyer, and it's working for the wrong side. This is not a character flaw. This is biology. The same brain that kept your ancestors alive by reacting fast to threats is now reacting fast to a leather jacket marked 40% off. The mechanism is identical. The urgency feels real. The need feels genuine. But here's what I've learned, and what took me longer than I'd like to admit to actually apply. The feeling of wanting something and the decision to buy it don't have to happen at the same time. That gap, that pause, is where wealth is built or destroyed. The 48-hour rule is simple. Almost embarrassingly simple. Before you buy anything that isn't essential, anything, you wait 48 hours. You don't argue with yourself. You don't make a pros and cons list. You just wait. You put it in a cart, you write it on a note, and you leave it there. What happens next is the interesting part. Most of the time, after 48 hours, the urgency is gone. Not because you became more disciplined, not because you reasoned your way out of it, but because the emotion passed. The wave broke. And without the emotional charge underneath it, the purchase doesn't make sense anymore. The brain that was building a case for it has moved on to other things. Research out of the University of Minnesota found that when people introduce a deliberate pause before discretionary spending, they reduce impulse purchases by over 30%. Not by becoming more frugal, not by suffering, just by waiting. 30%. Think about what that means over a year. Over 5 years. Over the decade between now and when you want to stop trading your time for money. But here's the part that most people miss when they hear about this habit. It's not just about the money you don't spend. It's about where that money goes instead. When you don't buy the thing, you have a choice. A conscious choice. And over time, making that choice repeatedly, redirecting that money towards something that grows instead of something that depreciates. That's the real game. That's the compound interest of self-awareness. The jacket fades. The watch loses value the moment you put it on. The furniture becomes background noise within a week. But the money that didn't go there, that money has a different trajectory. I'm not asking you to stop enjoying life. I'm not saying don't buy nice things. What I'm saying is this: most of what we buy impulsively, we don't actually want. We want the feeling we think it will bring. And that feeling, you already know this, lasts about 4 days. The 48-hour rule doesn't fight your impulses. It just outlasts them. There's also something else happening when you practice this consistently. Something quieter. Your relationship with money starts to shift. You start noticing the pattern. You start seeing how many times a day something tries to trigger that reflex in you. An ad, a notification, a conversation, a window display. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You realize that an enormous amount of your financial life has been running on autopilot. Not decided, just reacted to. And there's something almost uncomfortable about that realization, because it means the life you have right now is in large part the sum of reactions you didn't fully choose. But the flip side of that is freeing. If reactions got you here, then choices can get you somewhere else. That's what the 48-hour rule is at its core. It's not a budgeting trick. It's a practice of choosing. Slowly, quietly, consistently. Choosing where your money goes instead of letting the moment choose for you. The secret isn't earning more. It's stopping the leaks. And most leaks don't roar. They drip. I want you to think about the last 30 minutes you spent on your phone. Not judge it. Just think about it. Maybe you scrolled through some news. Maybe you watched a few videos. Maybe you checked social media, read a few headlines, went down a rabbit hole about something you'll barely remember tomorrow. Nothing wrong with any of it. We all do it. But here's a question worth sitting with. Did any of those 30 minutes make you more valuable? Not more informed, not more entertained, more valuable, in the sense that someone, somewhere, would pay you more for your time because of what you now know or can now do. Most of us, if we're honest, would say no. And that's not a criticism. It's just an observation. Because the difference between people who build wealth quietly over time and people who stay in the same financial place for decades often comes down to this one distinction: what they do with their discretionary time and attention, not their working hours, their free hours. There's a concept I keep coming back to called human capital. It sounds academic, but it's one of the most practical ideas in personal finance. Human capital is the sum of what you can do: your skills, your knowledge, your ability to solve problems that other people will pay to have solved. And unlike money in a bank account, human capital can't be inflated away. It can't be taxed out of existence. It moves with you. It compounds with you. The challenge is that building it is slow, invisible. It doesn't give you a notification when it grows. You don't feel richer after 15 minutes of focused learning. You feel roughly the same as before. And that's exactly why most people don't do it consistently. Because the feedback loop is too long for a brain that was designed to respond to immediate rewards. But here's what's true. Even if it doesn't feel true in the moment, the person who spends 15 focused minutes a day learning something applicable, a skill, a framework, a capability that the market values, is making a compounding investment in themselves. Every single day. Over 1 year, that's roughly 90 hours of deliberate skill building. Over 5 years, that's 450 hours. Do you know what 450 hours of focused, intentional learning in the right direction can do to a person's earning potential? To the conversations they can enter? To the opportunities they can recognize and act on? It's not theoretical. The data is consistent. People who invest in continuous learning throughout their careers out-earn their peers by significant margins, not because they're smarter, because they're more useful, and the market pays for usefulness. Now, I want to make a distinction that matters. Because there's a version of this that looks like learning, but isn't. Consuming content is not the same as learning. Watching a documentary about investing is not the same as understanding how to evaluate an asset. Listening to a podcast about entrepreneurship is not the same as building the skill of selling. Reading an article about productivity is not the same as reorganizing your workflow. Most of what we consume passes through us. It's entertaining. It's even interesting. But it doesn't stick, and it doesn't transfer, because we never had to do anything with it. We were passive. The information came in, activated a little dopamine, and drifted away. Real learning requires a different posture. It requires that you do something with what you're taking in. Write it down. Apply it to a real situation. Teach it to someone else. Build something with it. The moment you move from receiving to using, retention goes up dramatically. And more importantly, the skill starts to become part of you. This is the difference between watching a cooking video and actually cooking the dish. One passes the time. The other builds something. So what does this look like practically for someone over 40? It doesn't mean going back to school. It doesn't mean spending money on expensive courses. It means identifying one skill, just one, that is genuinely valuable in today's economy, and spending 15 minutes a day moving toward it with intention. Maybe it's learning how to write clearly. Maybe it's understanding financial statements. Maybe it's developing a skill in digital marketing, or data analysis, or negotiation. Maybe it's deepening your expertise in something you already know professionally, but never fully developed. The skill almost doesn't matter as much as the consistency and the intention behind it, because what you're really building, underneath the specific knowledge, is the identity of someone who grows, someone who doesn't coast, someone who treats their mind like the most important asset on their balance sheet, because it is. And here's the quiet truth about this habit. The people who do this, who spend just 15 intentional minutes a day building something real, they don't just earn more over time, they think differently. They see opportunities that others walk past. They have more confidence in rooms where decisions are made. They stop feeling like the economy is happening to them and start feeling like they have some say in the matter. That shift, from passive to active, from consumer to builder, doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with 15 minutes today. Not the version of you that has more time, this version, right now. Every video you watch can either make you richer or just pass the time. The choice, quietly, is yours. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. It's Sunday evening. You're winding down, maybe watching something, maybe just sitting with a cup of coffee. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a low hum. Not loud enough to ruin the moment, but present enough that you notice it. A vague unease about money. Not panic, not crisis. Just fog. You're not sure exactly how much came in this month. You remember a few larger expenses but couldn't tell someone the total without checking. You have a general sense of where things stand, but you wouldn't call it clarity. You'd call it approximate. And here's the thing. Most people live their entire financial lives in that fog. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they don't care, but because nobody ever told them that the fog itself is expensive, that the money you don't track has a way of going places you didn't choose. That financial awareness, the simple act of knowing precisely where you stand, is itself a wealth-building habit. Wealthy people, not the flashy ones, the genuinely wealthy ones, tend to have a very different relationship with their numbers. They're not obsessed. They're not anxious. They're not checking their accounts every hour. But they are deliberate. They have a rhythm, a recurring appointment with their own financial reality that keeps them grounded and oriented, week after week. It doesn't take long. That's the part that surprises people. 10 minutes, once a week, that's the ritual. Not a budget overhaul, not a spreadsheet with 14 tabs, not a 2-hour deep dive into every transaction. Just 10 minutes of honest, focused attention. Where did the money go this week? Does it reflect what I actually value? And is there anything here I need to address? That's it. But those 10 minutes do something that nothing else quite does. They break the fog. When you sit down once a week and actually look, really look, at your numbers, you start seeing things you didn't know were there. The subscription you forgot about, the category where spending quietly crept up over the past month, the automatic charge from a service you haven't used in 6 months, the pattern of small purchases on Thursday afternoons that, added together, amount to something significant. None of these things are dramatic. None of them would qualify as a financial emergency. But together, over time, they represent the difference between wealth that accumulates and wealth that leaks. And here's the psychological piece that matters most. When you look at something regularly, you start caring about it differently. Not in a stressful way, in an engaged way. The way you'd care about a garden you tend every week versus one you ignore and then panic about in summer. Money responds to attention. Not in a mystical sense, in a very practical sense. When you're watching, you make different choices. Not because you're policing yourself, but because awareness itself changes behavior. You don't spend as unconsciously when you know you'll be reviewing it on Sunday. The review creates accountability, and the accountability, quietly, keeps you honest. Now, I want to address something directly because I know it comes up. Some people avoid this ritual not because they're lazy, but because they're afraid of what they'll find. Looking at your finances when things feel uncertain, when the numbers aren't where you want them to be, when there's debt or shortfalls or decisions you regret, that's uncomfortable. It takes a particular kind of courage to sit with that discomfort instead of maintaining the fog. But here's what I've seen, over and over again. The fog is always worse than the reality. The anxiety that comes from not knowing is almost always more damaging than the clarity that comes from knowing, even when what you find isn't good. Because when you know, you can do something. When you're in the fog, you're just reacting. You're being managed by your finances instead of managing them. And there's a dignity in knowing your numbers, in facing them without drama, without catastrophizing, without shame. Just, here's where I am. Now, what's the next right move? That question, asked weekly, consistently over years, it changes things. Not because any single week is transformative, but because the accumulation of that awareness builds something that no financial product can sell you. A genuine, grounded relationship with your own money. Here's what the 10-minute review actually looks like. Practically, you sit down. Sunday evening works well, but any consistent time is fine. You open your bank account, your credit card statements, whatever you use. You look at what came in and what went out. You check whether your savings or investment contributions happened as planned. You note anything that surprised you. And you ask yourself one honest question. Does this week reflect my actual priorities? Not the priorities you'd list if someone asked. The ones revealed by where the money actually went. That question is uncomfortable sometimes, but it's the right question because your bank statement doesn't lie. It shows you what you actually valued, not what you meant to value, not what you told yourself you valued, what you actually, demonstrably chose. And over time, as you do this weekly, you'll notice the gap between those two things. What you intend and what you do start to close. That closing gap is wealth. Not just financial wealth, the kind that comes from living more deliberately, from being the author of your own choices rather than a passenger in them. You don't control what you don't measure, and what you measure week after week quietly starts to change. There's a conversation I want you to think back on. Not a specific one, necessarily. Just a type of conversation. The kind you've had with certain people in your life. Maybe a colleague. Maybe someone you met at an event. Maybe an old friend who went in a different direction than you did, where afterward you felt something shift. Not inspired in the motivational poster sense. Something quieter than that. More like expansion. Like the ceiling in the room got a little higher. Like something you had quietly decided wasn't possible for you started to feel, almost against your will. Like maybe it was. You've had that feeling. I know you have. Because everyone has, at least once. The question worth asking is, how often are you in rooms, physical or otherwise, where that feeling is available to you? Jim Rohn's observation that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with has been repeated so many times it started to sound like a bumper sticker. But underneath the familiarity, there's something genuinely worth examining. Not as motivation, but as mechanics. Because the people around you don't just influence your mood or your mindset in some abstract way. They influence what you consider normal, what you consider possible, what problems you think are worth solving, what risks seem reasonable versus reckless, what a good year looks like, what enough means. These are not small things. These are the invisible parameters that shape every financial decision you make. Think about it this way. If everyone in your immediate circle is worried about the same things, making rent, managing debt, hoping for a raise that keeps pace with inflation, then those are the financial problems that feel universal. That feel like the ceiling, and you calibrate accordingly. You solve for those problems. You plan around those constraints, because that's the water you're swimming in. And fish don't think about water, but spend meaningful time around people whose financial problems are different in scale. People who are thinking about how to allocate capital, how to structure a business, how to build something that outlasts their active working years. And something starts to happen. Their problems become imaginable to you. And once a problem is imaginable, you can begin to work toward it. This isn't about status. It's not about finding richer friends to impress or using people as stepping stones. It's about something more fundamental, the expansion of what you believe is available to you. Because belief, quiet, internalized belief about what's possible, drives behavior more than almost anything else. You don't pursue what you can't imagine. And you can't imagine what you've never been close to. Now, I want to be honest about something, because this habit is the one that makes people most uncomfortable. It can feel transactional, It can feel like you're supposed to strategically audit your friendships and start networking with people because of their net worth. That's not what I'm saying. And frankly, that approach doesn't even work. People with real success can sense when someone is interested in what they have rather than who they are. What I'm describing is something more organic, more patient. It's about being intentional over time, about where you put your attention and your presence. It's about saying yes to the professional association meeting instead of staying home. It's about taking the coffee meeting with someone whose career trajectory makes yours look like an early draft. It's about finding the group, the community, the forum, online or off, where the conversation is operating at a level that stretches you. It's about being willing to be the least experienced person in the room sometimes, to ask questions instead of performing competence, to listen more than you speak, not out of passivity, but out of genuine curiosity about how people who've built what you want to build actually think. That posture, curious, humble, present, is magnetic, and it opens doors that credentials alone never could. There's another dimension to this habit that doesn't get talked about enough. Opportunity is not distributed randomly. It moves through networks. It travels along the lines of trust and familiarity between people. The job that never gets posted publicly. The investment opportunity shared among a small group. The introduction that changes the trajectory of a business. The conversation that leads 3 steps later to something you couldn't have planned. None of that reaches you if you're isolated. None of it reaches you if your network is a closed loop of people all operating at the same level, solving the same problems, with access to the same information. This is not cynical. It's just how human systems work. Value moves through relationships. And relationships are built, or neglected, over time, through consistent small acts of genuine connection. The people who understand this don't treat networking as an event. They treat it as a practice, an ongoing, quiet, long-term investment in human relationships that pays dividends in ways that are impossible to predict and equally impossible to manufacture at the last minute. So the habit, practically, is this. Once a week, or once a month, if that's more realistic, put yourself somewhere new. A different conversation, a different room, a different community. Not to perform, not to collect contacts, but to listen, to learn, to let your sense of what's normal get gently, persistently expanded. And here's the thing about doing this over years. Your reference points change. Your instincts change. The voice in your head that tells you what's reasonable, what's ambitious, what's worth attempting. That voice starts to sound different. Less like the ceiling, more like a floor. Your income isn't the average of 5 people by coincidence. It's gravitational pull. And gravity, quietly, works on you whether you're aware of it or not. The only question is whether you're choosing the orbit. I want to tell you something that took me longer than it should have to fully accept. Willpower is not a strategy. I know that's not what we were taught. We were raised on the idea that discipline is the thing that separates people who succeed from people who don't. That if you just want it badly enough, if you just try hard enough, if you just stay focused and committed, you'll do the right thing with your money every month, without fail. And maybe you've tried that version. Maybe you've told yourself, month after month, that this time you'll save more, invest more, put something away before the spending starts. And maybe it works for a while, until it doesn't. Until something comes up, or the month gets expensive, or you're tired, or you just don't. And then comes the guilt. The familiar cycle of intention, failure, resolution, and intention again. Here's what I want you to hear clearly. That cycle is not a character flaw. It's a design flaw. You were using the wrong tool for the job. The human brain is not built for consistent long-term financial behavior. It's built for now, for immediate needs, immediate threats, immediate rewards. The part of your brain that understands compound interest and retirement timelines and the importance of investing in your 40s. That part is real, and it means well. But it is constantly competing with a much older, much louder part that sees money in your account and immediately begins generating reasons to use it. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience, and fighting it with sheer resolve, month after month, decade after decade, is a losing battle for almost everyone. The people who win this game, consistently, quietly, over time, don't win because they have more discipline. They win because they built systems that removed the decision entirely. They automated it. The concept is simple, almost deceptively simple. On the day your paycheck hits, or as close to it as possible, a predetermined amount moves automatically into your investment or savings account. Before you see it, before you touch it, before your brain has a chance to look at the full balance and start doing the math on what else that money could do. It's called paying yourself first. And the automation piece is what makes it actually work, instead of just being a nice idea. When the transfer is automatic, there's no decision to make, no moment of temptation, no negotiation with yourself about whether this month is a good month or whether you'll do it next month instead. The money moves, the rest is what you have to work with. And remarkably, almost universally, people adapt to what's available. They spend what's there, and when less is there, they spend less, usually without the suffering they imagined. There's a psychological principle underneath this called present bias. It's the documented, consistent human tendency to overvalue what's available right now versus what's available in the future. $1 today feels worth more than $1 in 10 years. Not rationally, but emotionally, viscerally, in the way that actually drives behavior. Automation doesn't fight present bias. It sidesteps it entirely. By the time your brain is looking at your account, the investment is already done. It's already in motion. The compounding has already begun. Your future self is already benefiting. Not because your present self made a heroic choice, but because your present self set up a system and then got out of the way. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Because here's the truth about systems versus willpower over a 20-year time frame. Systems show up every month. Willpower calls in sick. Now, I want to address the most common objection I hear when people think about automating their investments. I don't have enough left over to automate anything meaningful. I understand that feeling. I've felt it. But I want to push back on the framing. Gently. The question isn't whether you have enough left over. The question is whether you've actually tried structuring your life around a smaller available balance, and whether, if you did, you'd genuinely suffer, or whether you'd adjust. Start with whatever number doesn't feel reckless, not what's comfortable, what's slightly uncomfortable but survivable. Because that slight discomfort is actually the mechanism. It's what forces the adaptation. It's what makes you look at your spending with fresh eyes, because the cushion isn't there to absorb the slack. Even $50 a month, automated from age 42, invested in a diversified index fund, compounds into something real over 20 years. Not because $50 is a lot, but because the consistency is everything. Because it never misses. Because it doesn't have a bad month or lose focus or get distracted by something shiny. $50 a month, every month, without exception, beats $200 a month with exceptions every time, over a long enough timeline. There's something else that happens when you automate your investments that I didn't expect the first time I set it up. You start thinking about money differently. When investing becomes a fixed, automatic part of your financial life, like a bill that pays your future self, it stops feeling optional. It stops being the thing you do with whatever's left. It becomes the thing that happens first, that everything else organizes around. And that shift in perspective, from I invest what I have left to I live on what remains after I invest, is not just mathematical, it's identity level. You become someone who invests, not someone who plans to invest or tries to invest or invested that one year when things were going well. Someone for whom investing is simply what happens, automatically, reliably, every single month. That identity, maintained over years, is worth more than any single investment decision you'll ever make. Don't trust your willpower. Build the system. And then let the system do what willpower never could. Show up quietly, without fail, every single time. We've covered a lot of ground together. And before I bring this home, I want to pause for just a moment. Because if you're still here, at this point in the video, that tells me something about you. It tells me you're not looking for shortcuts. You're not here for a hack or a trick or a headline. You came here because something in you is serious about this, about building something real, about closing the gap between where you are and where you know you're capable of being. And I don't take that lightly. So if this conversation has meant something to you, if even one idea landed in a way that felt true, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. We're here every week, having exactly this kind of conversation. No noise, no hype, just honest, grounded thinking about money, time, and the choices that shape a life. Hit subscribe. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been quietly carrying that fog we talked about, share this video with them. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do for someone is put the right words in front of them at the right moment. Now, back to what matters, because there's one more thing I need to say before we close. Something that ties everything together. Something that, if you miss it, makes all 5 habits feel like separate items on a checklist, rather than what they actually are. They're not 5 habits. They're one habit, expressed 5 different ways. The thread running through all of it. The 48-hour pause, the daily learning, the weekly review, the intentional relationships, the automated investment, is this: deliberate design over passive reaction. Every single habit we've discussed is, at its core, a decision to stop letting life happen to your finances and start making conscious, intentional choices about where your attention, your time, and your money actually go. That sounds simple, and in principle, it is, but in practice, it runs directly against the current. Because everything around you, the advertising, the algorithms, the culture of immediate gratification, the social pressure to spend at the level of your peers, all of it is designed, with extraordinary sophistication, to keep you reactive, to keep you spending before you think, consuming before you learn, floating in the fog, isolated from people who could expand your sense of what's possible, trusting willpower instead of building systems. The current is strong, and swimming against it quietly, consistently, without drama, is the actual work. Here's what I've noticed about people who build real wealth over time. Not inherited wealth, not lottery wealth, built wealth. The kind that comes from decades of small, right decisions compounding on each other. They're not particularly intense about it. They don't talk about money constantly. They don't obsess over every market movement. They don't sacrifice their relationships or their health-chasing numbers. They're not grinding in the way that gets celebrated online. They're just deliberate, quietly, persistently deliberate. They have their systems in place. They do their weekly review. They protect their attention. They're careful about who they spend time with. And they don't make many impulse decisions. Not because they've suppressed the impulse, but because they've built enough structure around their lives that the impulse rarely gets a clean shot. That's the architecture. Not a single dramatic choice. Not one transformative moment. Just a quiet structure. Built habit by habit, decision by decision, week by week. That makes the right thing happen almost automatically, and makes the wrong thing harder to do by accident. And here's the part that I think matters most for anyone over 40. Hearing this. You have something that younger people don't have. You have context. You've lived enough to know what actually matters. You've had the experiences that taught you, sometimes painfully, what doesn't bring the lasting satisfaction you thought it would. You've watched certain choices play out over time, yours and other people's. You have a clarity about what you value that most 25-year-olds are still years away from developing. That clarity is an asset, a significant one. The question is whether you let it translate into different behavior, or whether you carry the insight without acting on it, which is its own particular kind of loss. Because knowing and doing are not the same thing. We've always known that. The gap between them is where most financial potential quietly evaporates. But the habits we've talked about today, they're bridges across that gap. Small ones, crossable ones. Not tomorrow, not when things settle down, not when the timing is better. Now, with what you have, where you are. I want to leave you with something that isn't a tip, not a framework, not a step, just a picture. Imagine someone, probably in their mid-50s. Nothing about them screams money. They drive a reasonable car. They live in a house that fits their life without announcing it. They dress well, but not expensively. They're calm in conversations about money, not because they're indifferent, but because they're not afraid. They've seen the number. They review it every week. They know exactly where they stand. They don't talk about what they're building. They just build it. They've been doing this for 15 years. Not perfectly. There were months where the system slipped. Years where life got complicated. Decisions they'd take back if they could. But the habits held. Not every time. Most times. And most times over 15 years is enough. Enough to have options. Enough to say no to things that cost them too much of themselves. Enough to stop doing work that diminishes them and start doing work that fits who they actually are. That's it. That's the whole picture. No yacht, no early retirement at 35, no viral moment, just a life with more room in it, more breathing space, more alignment between what they value and how they actually live. That's what the habits build. Not wealth as a number, wealth as a condition. The 48-hour pause doesn't sound like freedom, but it is. 15 minutes of real learning a day doesn't sound like power, but it is. 10 minutes with your finances on Sunday evening doesn't sound like clarity. But it is. One new room, one new conversation, one expanded relationship at a time doesn't sound like opportunity. But it is. One automatic transfer on payday doesn't sound like security. But it is. None of it sounds like much. That's the whole point. Wealth built quietly doesn't announce itself while it's being built. It just arrives one day. Not as a surprise exactly, but as a confirmation. A quiet confirmation that the small things mattered, that the patient things mattered, that the unsexy, undramatic, consistent things were, all along, the real things. You don't need to start all 5 habits tomorrow. Pick one. The one that felt most true when you heard it. The one that landed somewhere specific. Not in your head, but lower than that. Start there. Build it until it doesn't require effort anymore. Then add another. That's how architecture works. One beam at a time. And one day you look up and there are walls. And then a roof. And then you're standing inside something solid that wasn't there before. That nobody built for you. That no market gave you. That no windfall delivered. Something you made. Quietly. Over time. By choosing, repeatedly, to be just slightly more deliberate than the day before. There's a question I'll leave you with. Not to answer out loud. Just to carry. 5 years from now, if nothing changes, if the habits stay the same, if the fog stays in place and the systems never get built, where are you? Sit with that, and then ask the other version. 5 years from now, if one habit takes hold, then another, then another. Where could you be? The distance between those two answers is not filled with sacrifice or suffering or radical reinvention. It's filled with small decisions, made consistently in the quiet moments nobody sees. That distance is available to you. It always has been. If this video gave you something real, share it. Not because it helps the channel, though it does, but because you know someone who needs this conversation. Someone who's been carrying the fog. Someone who's smart and capable and just hasn't had the right words handed to them at the right moment. Be that moment for them. Send this to 5 people who matter to you. Subscribe if you want to keep having conversations like this one. We're here every week. No noise, no hype, just honest thinking about the choices that shape a financial life. And leave a comment. Not a reaction, a real one. Tell me what landed. Tell me what you're going to do differently. Tell me what you want us to talk about next. Because the next video gets built from what you bring to this one. This channel grows because of people who take it seriously. And if you made it here, you're one of them.